Will would. More like won't wouldn't, am I right? That's how the video starts. I have wanted to make a video on Will Wood for a mighty long time now, but I haven't been able to put my thoughts on his music into words no matter how many times I've tried. He makes folk music, psychedelic rock, evil jazz, doo-wop, whatever the hell dark cabaret is, and some of the saddest pieces of music I've ever heard, along with his discography is one of the most veritable I have ever had the pleasure of listening to, and trying to rank every individual song is a lot harder than some of the prior artists I've done so with. But after several years, a hiatus-ending tour, and a remastered normal album, and several rewritten lists later, I'm finally ready to try one last time. A few words before we begin. As always, these are my very subjective opinions. I respect anyone who has a different favorite or least favorite song than me, unless you like Big Idea from HAR, then you're unredeemable at this point. As well as this, while Genius.com helped a lot in the creation of this video, a lot of the interpretations of the songs are my own. So if you feel the need to comment the actual meaning, just remember that art is subjective, and I am also a little stupid. Now, without any more waffling, let's get to the list.
Sometimes I don't like gay people.
Now, I have gotten a lot of comments over the years about me putting songs in low tiers, so I'm going to make something super clear. I don't dislike any songs by Will Wood, and the placements are mainly just how powerful I think they are lyrically and vocally. D tier isn't bad. Let's say it stands for darn tootin' alright, but like I said, there are no Will Wood songs I dislike. Except one.
Cast it into the fire! Destroy it!
Destroy to Enjoy is an interesting case. Placed right at the end of the Tapeworm's first musical outing, Everything Is a Lot, after the eponymous song, it takes a while to get started, after the song thought to be the closing track fades into sounds of construction. This goes on for nearly 2 minutes until the building sounds become rhythmic and turn into a stomp. This is followed by a chant of some of Will's most esoteric and indecipherable lyrics to date. Interestingly enough, some of these are reused in the band's next album, Selfish, in the song 2012 specifically. It ends with Will and the group chanting "Destroy to Enjoy" over and over until all the chaos melts away and the album finally ends. It's clearly experimental and just a fun chaotic way to mirror the start of the album with 6up50's rambunctious soundscape, but that doesn't mean it's good. It could have been fun as a little bonus track, but the 2 minutes of construction sounds are grueling to get through. Especially in the original version of the album where this isn't a separate song, and Everything Is a Lot, the song, is just 5 minutes long, making it impossible to have on a playlist unless you want to sit through the construction. It's like if a red traffic light was a song. It's fun, but ultimately doesn't add anything to the album. It sucks to listen to on a playlist unless you have a local file with the trimmed version. That's all I have to say about the F tier though, so let's continue.
Music, I call this music.
Now let's move on to some songs which I don't personally care for, but will still listen to on occasion. They aren't my favorite, but I still understand the vision. Please don't yell at me in the comments. D tier is not me saying it's bad, unlike the last song.
Tonight, we steal the moon!
This may not be too surprising of a placement, as Red Moon is one of the most forgetful songs in Will Wood's discography. A lot of people really like this song, and it's a bop for sure, but it's a little basic in comparison to some of the more eclectic songs from Everything Is a Lot. It's slower than most of the album and a lot jazzier with an emphasis on the saxophone, and it's a delight to listen to, but lyrically it's hard to decipher. On the rare occasion I see someone talking about this song, it's typically asking what it's about. Will has given many answers over the years, but most of them have been unserious, like him announcing before a live performance that the song was about his menstrual cycle. Either way, it's a fun song, but it is a big skip for me whenever it comes up on my playlist, as it doesn't quite fit in with the rest of his discography for me. Well, the bridge is completely accurate for me as an aromantic asexual. I will probably never know. This song is just about Will's thoughts on sexual activities and how weird the whole thing kind of is. He's jonesing for someone who really gets him going, but fully ignores him regardless of his best efforts. There's some incredible lyricism from Will on this track from the likes of
She's got the touch of an anesthesiologist.
and others, and while it's a super interesting song lyrically, I don't really care for the song tonally. On top of the fact that it's a topic which doesn't interest me, the slower pace between a Kaido and a Little Bit Mine really hurts how the song progresses. And while Will's piano saves it a lot, the rest of the song instrumentally is fairly basic. C tier already? I know, as the kids say, I might be a glazer, but I really like Will Wood. C tier songs are fun ditties and bops which I could casually listen to, but aren't anything special in my opinion. Now, I know it seems that I hate Everything Is a Lot, with the F tier and D tier completely composed of songs from it, but that's not true. I enjoy the album a lot. Look, I even put some of its songs in C tier.
And today we're counting down our picks for the cover songs fans wish were never done.
For once, a Will Wood song is sung from the perspective of a stable person, or someone who was really stable. He's singing about their ex who helped him grow as a person and improve his mental state, but has eventually left him. He's on his knees hoping that that person that brought him down from the high of such a ruined mind could still find the same sympathy that brought her to him in the first place.
What can I say to convince you or do to make you agree with me?
Disguised under an upbeat melody, A Little Bit Mine is a seriously heartfelt love song from Will. Extremely rare in his earlier discography, I know, but it's true. It's really cool to hear a type of song that we'll hear a lot more from his more recent work, but it does suffer being from the Tapeworms era by standing out. It's not quite like the persona Will had during this period, so it doesn't seem as genuine as his later work. Still a super underrated song, but not something I could ring the praises for over and over again.
What inspired you to build a second Krusty Krab right next door to the original?
Money!
This is an incredibly fun song about the wild world of capitalism, and my goodness do I love it. The song, not capitalism. It changes its beat more times than Kendrick's Euphoria, and it never feels abrupt. Of course, the main focus here will be Will's bit. It sounds a lot like something you'd hear from the Tapeworms. The distorted vocals with the sax is classic Will, but I will say it doesn't quite fit with the rest of the song. It's like they took Will's feature and tried to build a different song around it. The verses on Human Zoo side are fantastic, and I really hope that since Will's feature, they've gained more attention because they're a genuinely brilliant band. I just don't think the feature makes the song any better than it already is.
We just advanced to the final 14 of BFB!
Okay, listen, before you start making your angry comment about how could you put BFB above Red Moon or something, just try to see this from my perspective. Regardless of where I put this song, I would get someone mad at me. If I put it at the bottom, someone would say, wow, I can't believe you hate BFB, you must hate whimsy and fun. But if I put it anywhere above last place, people would get upset for me about putting it above a song with, you know, lyrics. Anyway, this is just a fun little interlude track before the final two songs from In Case I Make It. As a comment on the video said, it's kind of like putting a lamau after a venting text to soften the blow. It's a really nifty little jingle which could totally be my alarm to wake me up in the morning. Putting anything below a B tier was super difficult, and this one missed a higher ranking by the skin of its teeth. Let me preface this entry by saying it's a super fun song and I love the instrumental after the choruses so much, but there are a few issues. First of all, it overstays its welcome just a bit. It has a very slow ending which drags on a lot in comparison to its first half. The song seems to talk about the sanctity of the human body, thus the eponymous chorus line of Your Body, My Temple. This song also comes from the soundtrack of the podcast Camp Here and There, which means it has a whole different meaning in the narrative of that show. Regardless, the lyrics are cryptic as ever when it comes to Will, and that doesn't help its case. It's an enjoyable listen, but I can't get behind it too well. I know the last few tiers have been short as hell, but that's because I really like Will Wood. I promise the remaining tiers won't be nearly as short because they have more songs which I want to talk about. Anyway, let's get started.
And I'll hold you in contempt.
I hold myself in contempt!
Easily one of the most iconic songs from the Tapeworms era, Thermodynamic Lawyer is a shamelessly vulgar and insane track which Will puts everything into. Starting off with a Jim Carrey sample of him screaming, I hold myself in contempt, throwing you into a truly dastardly saxophone riff. His screeching vocals add on to the already obscene lyrics, which turn into an absolutely wild ride from start to finish. The song goes over a toxic relationship which has negative attributes from both sides, and it does so in a truly despicable manner. This person absolutely hates his partner for what they do, but it's clear to see that he's not innocent when it comes to the relationship. He continues to push that regardless of what this individual did, that his heart wouldn't be broken and that he'd just be able to move on. But I think that's because he's a sociopath, honestly. I mean, just look at this lyric. As the song concludes, he finishes explaining all the wrong this person has done and ultimately claims that she should just die for the sake of humanity. Of course, humanity wouldn't be affected by her death, but in order to not sound selfish, he insists that it would benefit the world. But it's pretty clear that he wants to have the satisfaction of seeing this person leave the world. I mean, the closing lines of him begging her to die get increasingly worse as he goes from simply hoping that she dies to hoping that she gets a disease like cancer or AIDS to straight up saying that she should just kill herself. I think the final line of this song perfectly explains how he acts in the song.
Absolutely reprehensible behavior.
Lyrically, it's a super complex and creative track portraying a truly, well, reprehensible person, but the audio onslaught you have to endure throughout the song is just a bit too much for me. 47 may seem extremely low, but may I remind you that this is B tier. It's still very good. I love this song, but in a ranking, some songs just have to be lower than others. Speaking of,
Bounce on it. Crazy style.
here's our first real pick from In Case I Make It. Vampire Reference goes over someone who is hopelessly devoted to someone who's left them, but still insists that he'll do anything for her. This person won't do anything to change the aspects of themselves which caused his partner to shy away, as the opening lyrics suggest.
Well, here we go, I'm turning over the same old leaf again.
He may insist that he's going to turn over a new leaf, but he never ends up doing so. He's sorry for all he's done to wrong her, but never changes as a person. He tells her that if she ever changes her mind about him, that he'll be waiting, even after death. But once the bridge hits, he finally thinks about changing, going as far as saying that he'd kill the person he was. But he quickly corrects himself, saying that that's just an option, and then returns to saying that he'll be waiting if she wants him. It's a really interesting type of love song, but the melody sounds an awful lot like another song, Laplace's Angel.
If you need me, I'll be in my coffin.
Of course, this song is called Vampire Reference, and Laplace is a song which references vampires, so it should be no surprise that the chorus melody is just Laplace's Angel, in a minor key. Whoa, that's the name of the song!
Don't try anything, Dr. Brutaloff. I know karate.
For those who don't know, Aikido is a form of martial arts which means defending yourself without causing any harm to your opponent. This is a fun way to title a song somewhat about love, as it shows Will's mindset on the subject. He talks about being obsessed with someone to the point of them being neurotic about them, but while not wanting to do anything which could cause harm to them. It's a nice little break from the intense sounds of Everything Is a Lot, and it's a nice little ditty. But it does have some deeper undertones in the lyrics. He seems to really enjoy the idea of being so obsessed with someone that he becomes mentally unwell. He asks to be given a diagnosis for an illness because of how much he romanticizes this idea, but the doctor's room is filled with, kids who need antidepressants. At the end of the song, the chorus repeats with a more rocky sound, showing how his obsession has altered his brain chemistry. It's a really interesting song, but not anything amazing. Still a fun listen though.
Who the hell is Socrates?
Where your nightmares end, my opinions begin. Inspired by a movie of the same name, Willard, in which the main character raises a colony of rats instead of spending time with other people. He was bullied frequently at a young age and is continuously picked on as he grows up, so he never made any meaningful connections or friends. So he bonds with white rats, which give him the feeling of friendship he's been looking for.
You might seem behind bars, but friend, this cage is inside out. It's awful out here, Socrates.
In the movie, Willard uses the rats to straight up eat people who harmed him in the past and ends up being locked in a mental asylum, but they let him keep the rat for some reason. This song seems to be from Willard's point of view shortly before this happens, as he laments to one of his rats named Socrates about the outside world, even going as far as to predict his fate by saying that they could lock him up and toss the key, but he keeps insisting to Socrates that the world is an awful and dangerous place. However, at the very last line of the song, he has a moment of clarity, realizing that he's simply lonely in the world. But he laughs it off, and we can hear a clip from the movie where Willard sends the rats to eat his boss as the bombastic instrumental flares up. It slowly melts away into the piano melody from Tomcat Disposables, the first track of the album, which happens to also be about rats. It's a really fun song, and a lot of people seem to agree that it should be the closing track on In Case I Make It in place of White Noise. And while I think it's a good song, I definitely think it has a great placement on the album. White Noise ends the album on such a perfect note, and this song is really just an adaptation of a movie. A good adaptation, but not Will's finest work. It's still fantastic lyrically.
I want every bit of you, I guess I'm self.
Starting out the album, Selfish is the first of 2 title tracks which sandwich the record between them. I'll talk about it a bit more in the album's themes on the next song, so I'll keep this a little short. He introduces the idea of identity and his difficult past, saying a refrain that we'll hear more in the next song of him saying that he doesn't remember the year 2012. But since the world was supposed to end in that year, he hopes it does because it means his situation will make sense and that he's doing better. As the music grows, Will proclaims that he doesn't quite know himself anymore, but that he's going to go out and search for his identity.
And I'm gonna be myself again.
It's an interesting statement. I bet this album will be just a nice journey of self-discovery.
Fuck!
Oh, okay, it was not that.
I want every bit of you, I guess I'm.
After an album's worth of mental breakdowns and attempts at self-discovery, Will concludes his second release with the Tapeworms with Ish, a perfect bookend to the opening track of Self. Many of the songs in the album explore different aspects of identity and different disorders come with it, but only here do we seem to get a proper continuation of Will talking about his personal mental state. Where Self in 2012 speak on how he struggled with figuring himself out for the longest time, Ish seems to show Will finally finding closure on the subject. It opens with more questions similar to the opening track, asking how long he'll end up living for, or if making an attempt at changing himself will result in him just becoming a different person. But Will eventually realizes that it doesn't really matter who he is, as regardless of who he becomes or stays as, he'll keep living at the same point in time and space. So he closes the album with the line,
I'm gonna be.
This reflects on Self's final lines of I'm gonna be myself again, and once he realizes that he doesn't know who he truly is, he chooses to simply exist in the moment. It's a really interesting sentiment to close the album on, but it works really well. I put this one above Self as I believe it works better as a closing track than the opening one, but they're both really fun listens with some interesting topic matter. The final full-length song released for Camp Here and There. It's apparently about the 2 main characters from the podcast being Sibney and Jebediah. Sorry Camp Here and There fans, I haven't fully listened to it yet, but the song in general is about a very problematic but codependent relationship. These 2 people care about each other, but it's gotten to the point where they rely on each other so much that they can't separate. It's a lot more chill than the other 3 songs, given lyrics on the soundtrack, and works perfectly. I mean, just look at how this closing line encapsulates how the 2 feel about each other.
So if love conquers all, then all else must have failed. I mean, who wants to fall? Can't we just take the stairs?
It's a perfect way to say that, and while it wasn't love at first sight, and the 2 have taken their relationship slowly, the feelings they share for each other are true and powerful. It's a really beautiful song, but I do feel like the verses are a little repetitive, only the third and final of which has a different instrumental sound. The progressively intensifying choruses make up for it though, as the song as a whole is really, really solid.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm still processing the fact that just passed on.
This is basically the final real song from Selfish, and it's pretty good, I'd say. It's certainly not bad, but definitely the weakest from the album in my opinion. It's the culmination of all the identity talk throughout the album, where Will directly grapples with trying to figure out who he is. The name of the song is a reference to a past persona of Will's, where he used to call himself William Sunshine, or Dr. Sunshine, so by saying that he's dead, it shows Will moving on from his past. We'll see more of this in the future, but this is a start to Will's experiences grappling with his former self. He goes on to talk about how he's not sure who he is, and how he wants to find an identity to call his own.
I am another sunshine, I am another moon at night, I'm no one and I'm nowhere in between.
This ends in a dramatic reprise of the chorus where he finally decides that he's simply going to be himself, mirroring what we'll see in Ish at the end of the album. It's a pretty catchy song and it is really fun to listen to, especially with the callback to Coddard's solution at the end, but it's not my favorite in comparison to the rest of the album.
They call me Dr. Worm.
It's finally time for the normal album. This song just barely missed the A tier, but is still really good. Opening with a fun fact about apples, which, as revealed from the remastered release, is a lie. We learn that the hole in the apple doesn't come from the outside in, and that a worm is actually grown from the inside. It talks about bad apples and how if they fall from the tree far enough, it's okay. This is probably a reference to the first part of the song's name being outliers and how society will only view them as socially acceptable if they stay far away from said society. This transitions into an upbeat riff, now with skeleton bones, and it's a bop for sure. The lyrics on this one talk about what the name suggests, how hypocritical humans can be wanting to be loved and to be special, but not make any changes to themselves, which would make that more likely to happen. A fun little quirk with this song is that at the end of every pre-chorus, Will cuts the music and just says a random thing like,
Funny, but, funny.
It's fun, but a little unnecessary, and before you say I hate fun and whimsy, just remember I put BFB above 4 actual songs. I will say his belt during the choruses more than make up for it. I love hearing Will scream during a song. Overall, pretty good, but definitely the weakest off the normal album, which is still a pretty high bar. Now we're getting into seriously good territory. I know that it may seem sudden to be getting into A tier based off of the runtime of the video, but I just really like Will Wood. It's hard to say any of his songs are objectively bad because they aren't, so let's just get started praising them, shall we?
Chris, is that a weed?
Man.
Call the police!
Licer Guy Daydream covers an idyllic paradise where it always seems like you're on LSD and everything's wonderful. Will talks about this amazing place which seems like the front of a postcard where he's constantly on a high. For example, looking down and seeing the animals around you become fractals. Drugs can act as an escape from one's worries, but Will seems to be either exaggerating his past experiences or recounting his own past thoughts for this song. He thinks about this imaginary dreamscape where he doesn't have to worry about anything and can almost feel like he's there, just hoping that one day he could have a place to escape from everything and just succumb to his addiction. Eventually, though, the daydream fades as he comes to his senses.
No, I don't believe there's a place I can call, a place to get away from it all.
It's a really sweet song about how powerful addiction can be and how stressful life can become. It's a nice, slower-paced track from Everything Is a Lot, and the ending note of Will talking about relaxing before he dies is really nice. Speaking of dying,
I'm actually really nervous. This is my first time.
the final song on the normal album. Will typically prefaces this song by saying that the idea is that the most important thing in the world to him is death, thus the subtlety of the song's title. It's basically saying that everyone who's ever lived has, is, and will die. The song is kind of a shock factor with some of the lyrics as it doesn't hold back its message.
At most a couple generations will remember the ways in which your life never mattered. So who cares if it's a waste?
It's simply Will acknowledging the inevitability of death, but you might ask where he's going with this. As the song approaches its end, Will explains how knowing you're going to die is important, because once you're aware of it, you can become a better person. If you only have this one chance at life, why waste it? Give it your all and try everything you'd ever want to experience. It's a really nice song and has a nice ode to everything the normal album covered, but it's not anything amazing. It's still a great listen though, and a really great ending song.
I'm just a man.
This is probably the most popular song from the Camp Here and There soundtrack. This song is about someone who is obsessed with someone else to an absurd degree. It's an extremely toxic relationship, which seems to be somewhat one-sided. This person is willing to go to the ends of the earth for the person they love, but to an extremely unsettling point, saying he'd do things such as drinking her own blood, reanimating himself, and even ending her life. However, he'll only do any of these things with her consent. He'll drink her blood if she lets him. He'll end her life if she's ready. She can reanimate him if she doesn't hate him. He's respectful of her free will, but little else. He seems to be gaslighting her into being with him the whole time with this method, asking her for things like looking for something of his or not to be human.
Yes, to every human, so don't be one. This was a mistake, don't take my leave. But before I go, let me know if
It's a really interesting song, which is definitely a little unsettling, but the beat is fantastic. The closing track on Will's first endeavor with the tapeworms reflects on all that we've heard in, for once, a fairly relaxed and worn out manner. I mean, if I just sang all the songs in this album, I'd be pretty tired too. Where the album starts with upbeat tracks saying things like "screw the police" and "I'm gonna fool a woman into sleeping with me," it slowly evolves into Will's character realizing more personal things. Leicester Guy Daydream shows his unattainable dreams, The First Step shows issues which he has, and Chemical Overreactions in its final moments finally reveals that this character knows deep down that he is a bad person. So, Everything Is a Lot finds Will thinking about every moment which has led him to where he is now, and wondering the meaning behind it all. The meaning of life isn't something that can be easily answered, but pondering it makes Will have a final realization.
So when you're holding on to everything, but you feel you cannot let it go, 'cause everything is a lot.
He stopped avoiding his problems through drinking and partying and doing drugs, and finally takes a moment to think about how chaotic his life truly is. The lifestyle he's led is absolutely taxing on his mental health, but we'll see him explore that more in the next Tapeworms release. But this song does a fantastic job of wrapping all those thoughts together with a sweet little bow.
Break out the L word.
Lesbian?
The other L word.
Lesbians?
After years of radio silence, Will Wood finally returned to the music scene with the release of this single, Love Me Normally. It's all about feeling out of place in the world and just wishing that you could be a regular person, or the idealized version of what a regular person is. Will says that by following social norms and rules, represented by him saying that he writes in iambic pentameter, that he'll no longer be an outlier. As the key rises every verse, we hear Will get more and more frantic about seeming normal in society, leaving a quarantine because people deny its existence, doing drugs at a party because that's what you're supposed to do, and etc. There's then an entire spoken word bridge where Will talks about his audience and then tells them to think about the person that they love. And then thinks about how wonderful people who fit into society must be, and wishes that his audience can have the fortune of being one, even though most people who listen to Will Wood are neurodivergent, let's be honest. Then we're hit with the hardest bridge of all time.
I was nothing before, so I couldn't have asked to be born. I'll be nothing again, so am I between now and then? Is there nothing to fear? 'Cause shit's getting weird. So to God who made this man, you better have one hell of a plan.
Fantastic way to lead into the final chorus, and a great song in general. I will say the spoken word part is good the first few times, and on its own it's great, but after a while I do kinda wish the song would just get on with it. It's hard to hate this song though, and I really do enjoy it, but there's so many good ones that it's hard to place anything on this list.
Your final challenge is to stop me from killing myself. Oh my god. What the fuck? Are you even allowed to say that?
A lot of songs in Selfish involve Will screaming very unpleasant things, and this is one of such songs. Another common thread in the Selfish songs is that they're named after different mental illnesses or delusions which have to do with one's identity. This one is a play off of Cothard's Delusion, in which someone feels like they're dead or are simply existing as a ghost or, more troublingly, a corpse. It begins with the soundscape of what sounds like a laboratory of some sort with some stuff brewing and beeping all over the place, and then Will begins to slowly sing about what might happen to him if he gave into identity. This quickly builds up speed as he says a line which reappears at the end of Dr. Sunshine is Dead. It's a really interesting line which has a completely different feel here as opposed to the ending of the album, and it perfectly transitions into the high-octane blast of music which is the remainder of the song. He shouts about how he's avoiding his self-discovery journey and flying past his metaphorical destiny as he chooses to ignore his search for identity. As we've heard from 2012, it's not exactly difficult for him to block out his problems, so this seems to be a continuation of that. Will clearly doesn't care about himself at this time, and this isn't any more obvious than in the chorus of the song, in which he shouts something that I'm sure left parents of young Will Wood fans disconcerted at best. It's a really catchy song, but some of the screaming is just a tad too much for me. I swear, I'm just trying to find excuses for putting songs in A tier at this point. He's just too good, man.
Oh fuck! I didn't think there'd be a skeleton here!
Skeleton Appreciation Day, or Bones for short, is a classic Will Wood song. Bones is a song all about vulnerability, and though it's written to suggest it's about anorexia, Will has said multiple times that it's not. It's one of his earliest written works, inspired by a time he and his girlfriend, at the time, didn't eat for 3 days, calling them skeleton days. Emotional vulnerability is difficult for a lot of people, especially if they're unhappy with their bodies, but what Will is suggesting here is that if someone is truly cared for, then they should feel safe and loved enough to show every aspect of themselves. At its heart, Bones is a love song, and he is clearly saying this to someone he truly cares about. No idea what the LSD part is about, but he said it was interesting to play that bit for his family. Anyway, the rest of the song seems to mostly be a love song. I wouldn't go serenading just anyone with this song though, as there are some wildly different interpretations of it out there.
She was a
This collaboration between Will and fellow artist Schaefer James is a fun ride down the river Styx, as the ferryman collects some new souls to lead down to the underworld. Will's enchanting vocals play as the ferryman calls to anyone heading down the stream, and Schaefer's is used as narration to describe some less than fortunate individuals. Joe is suffocated while handcuffed to a bed because he cheated on someone. Ben was beaten to death because, well, he also cheated on someone, but he's gay, so it's different. And Jane, who might be a lesbian, actually, wow, this song has some great representation, is poisoned because she lied to someone repeatedly. The highlight of this song, though, is Will's verse in the bridge, where he fully leans into the ferryman persona. In some of his deepest vocals in his discography, he talks about how, if you're a bad person, not even love can overcome the desire for personal gain. It's a really cool collaboration, and their voices work extremely well together. They played it together for the entirety of Will's Slouching Towards Branson tour, except for the show I went to, but it's okay. There are plenty of illegal recordings of them doing it together for me to watch at my leisure.
I've fallen up and I can't get stuck.
Falling Up is an extremely underrated song from In Case I Make It, and admittedly, it is hard to compete with the legendary 4-song run at the start of the album, but I still think it's pretty great. Lyrically, it's pretty darn vague, but the general consensus is that it's a song about the difficulties for self-improvement, and how the road towards it can be hard to traverse. For example, the chorus is a line which says, "Only plastic flowers never die." This talks about how being a fake and unrealized version of yourself will make it easier, but if you work to become the truest version of yourself, while it may be harder, you'll be able to live as your best self. Oh wait, what's this? Oh, the song is just about drugs! It talks about someone who was robbed in the year 2012, but cannot seem to remember who they were robbed by. This leads him into investigating this person to the point of obsession, not able to find any leads but still fixed on finding them. Every roadblock they find, they go through, regardless of the odds, though this isn't a positive mindset. It's a hopeless case, but they've given up on anything else to fully focus on finding the mystery individual, thus the title line repeating through the chorus. The mania only increases as we hit the bridge, revealing that his situation is extremely grim. He's become a vivid alcoholic, and he's dug every rabbit hole he could possibly go into. For a moment, it looks like he's going to give up, but it's been so long since this person has had any semblance of sanity. He begins to dig again, and as the music increases its pace, he gets more and more manic about it. He is determined to find the person who inflicted this obsession, no longer to bring justice, but just so everything can be worth it. He even adds a little bit to the end of the phrase to show how far gone he truly is. He knows how awful this situation has become, and either because of his searching in undesirable areas or drinking excessively, it would become the death of him. Eventually, he looks back up the metaphorical hole and no longer sees the light of the sun, and he knows that he's worked himself to death. It's a truly grim song, but a banger nonetheless. As mentioned several times, 2012 was the year where Will was the most involved in drugs and wild activities, thus he doesn't remember a lot of the year. This opens up the album proper after Self, and it starts off with a bang. The cantankerous saxophone, along with Will's hectic piano, leads into a beautiful opening phrase. Fuck! Similarly to Hand Me My Shovel, he's trying to find someone, but this time, it's himself. He wants to remember what all went down in 2012 because he genuinely forgets a lot of it. This is represented by him saying that he's going to retrace his steps to find himself. This, on top of a lot of obscure lyricism, makes for another great Will Wood song. Nothing much to say about this one, it just is pretty darn good. I wonder what was going on with Will in 2012. I bet with all those drugs he felt on top of the world. Kind of like never mind, this transition is not going well. The next one is
the main character, and you have to like me.
This is the most popular song from In Case I Make It, and while I don't think it's the best, I completely understand why that's the case. My favorite memory of this song was when Will opened up his live show talking about how he's just like the rest of us and he's really just a normal guy, and then played this song directly afterwards. The song comes from the view of an egotistical sociopath who truly believes that they are the center of the story of the world. He talks about how big of a person he is compared to everyone else, and how the other people are just living in his world, comparing them to NPCs, while he compares himself to Daleks and Superman. I think the chorus is the biggest point of ego, where he says this:
God forbid I'm seen just as an average human being. I mean, imagine if protagonists just died in the first scene.
He thinks of himself so highly that he believes anyone who sees him differently than the main character is being unbelievably rude. His ego truly knows no bounds, but he doesn't do anything to warrant his view of himself. He's just some guy, but he believes so deeply that he's great that he insists everyone has to like him, even though there's not a likable cell in his body. It's a really clever song, as most of the songs by Will tend to be, but it's also a certified banger. The piano riff at the start is iconic, and after a pretty laid-back album, hearing the Signatures tapeworm saxophone is lovely.
I don't have pronouns. What? Everybody has pronouns.
Okay, I hear you already. I me myself a 26, and yes, I agree, it is a very good and very fun song with a cool meaning, but I just like his other works a little bit more. The song is a really interesting examination into the male gender role and Will's experiences with breaking the norms. In a lot of his earlier shows, you could find him wearing more feminine clothing, and this led some people to believe he was trans, or at the very least not a rigid he/him. It turns out that Will himself thought so at one point, as he said in a statement explaining how the song isn't transphobic as some believed. After struggling for some time, I realized that my genderqueer identity wasn't necessary for me, that I was wearing it as a prop in order to serve a purpose. With that out of the way, let's get into the song proper. He talks about his troubles with fully expressing himself, as a part of him will always be thinking about the audience's thoughts on his identity. Though he's gotten better at ignoring this, that's the bridge line. He still occasionally thinks about the views of others. The chorus line suggests that if he were a girl, he wouldn't have to worry about all this, but he doesn't long to be one. He's comfortable in his gender identity and doesn't understand the socially acceptable limits on how to express being a man. At the end of the song, he speaks the title, wishing to just be I, me, myself, meaning that he's just going to be himself without worrying about any additional gender labels. It's a really powerful song, and I guess it makes sense that it blew up.
I did not just kill another person! Fungus.
Similarly to how Cody Fry's Underground is an extremely beautiful song about getting hit by a train, Jimmy Mushrooms is an extremely beautiful song about getting into a car accident. The first verse details a fun night Jimmy and his friends had in Wayne, New Jersey. He and his pals are just living it up, drinking margaritas, doing cocaine, and etc. They're having such a good time and feel so separated from reality through all the drugs that Jimmy wonders what they have to escape except life itself. He thinks this is a joke, but as he unknowingly takes his last drink, his fate is sealed. While he claims he's not afraid to die, he wonders how he would go out, and hopes that it's nothing stupid. However, as he and his friends slouch into the car together, Jimmy gets behind the wheel and will end up finding soon. They're all dangerously drunk, and they sing as the car begins to progressively go faster. And even though it's dangerous, the supportive words from his friends claiming he's fine convince him to continue driving. The car ends up ramming into a tree, presumably killing Jimmy at the very least, and that's the song. It's a great story told through the sound of Jimmy Buffett, and it's a really cool break from the norm for Will. He's always said that Everything Is a Lot was him finding his sound, and it's definitely a lot more experimental than a lot of his other works, but this song specifically ends up sounding fantastic. Don't drive drunk, kids.
Say goodbye to daily stains and dirty surfaces with new kitchen gun.
Another extremely popular track off of In Case I Make It. Against the Kitchen Floor details Will's discovery that he doesn't owe his heart to anyone, and that you shouldn't feel like you failed someone you used to be in a relationship with just because it didn't work out. He used to think about it like he needed to make things work and had to compromise to make sure whoever his partner was at the time was happy.
I could hold your hand but keep you at arm's length. Oh, hang me from a branch too high to climb and shake.
He's genuinely trying to improve himself in this regard and states several times that he's working on accepting people for loving him for him, and not what he does for them. The song sounds fantastic, especially the bridge, where the instrumental has been slowly increasing in intensity reaches its climax. And it's just a great listen from start to finish. Nothing too much to say here, you've all heard this song before.
Not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 5, not 5.
Well, you can break a shovel when you break new ground. Nah, just kidding. 5 Names finds Will in the back half of his search for identity, and he begins to realize that looking too hard can result in bad things happening. It shows him becoming increasingly desperate to find himself, asking things like, he's clearly confused and growing worried that he'll never figure out this whole identity thing, and in doing so, he realizes the dangers. The chorus is especially interesting, as it alludes to the very next song by talking about digging with a shovel. However, instead of talking about the digging process, he suggests that the shovel can break if you dig too deep, meaning that you could find something that you'll wish you didn't. The truth is another big theme in this song, and the big idea is that some truths should stay buried. But in the search for identity, you can risk digging them up. Also, it's a banger! You can break a shovel when you—
I hate cicadas so much. And they're everywhere.
Just missing the S tier, we've got Cicada Days. And for a song written in one day, it's really damn good. The name is an interesting topic, because cicadas really only have 2 phases. Sleep and do nothing but grow for 17 years, or make really annoying sounds for a few weeks. This allows for 2 interpretations of the song. And while it may clearly be about a relationship, the name can make you think about it in 2 different ways. The chorus suggests that the 2 have just separated, and it's 1 week into the Cicada Days. This could mean that they're now spending time away to grow and develop as people, and that in doing so they've lost contact with each other. Or they spent the week screaming at each other in rage, and this causes them to become more distant. This all culminates in the final chorus, where Will does actually start screaming things, such as begging someone to stay with him but resigning and packing his stuff. The final line is a fantastic resolution to all this.
Christ, now it feels damn inhumane to get all I've dreamed of.
It is a beautiful song, and it is really hard placing these, but I do think the next 21 are just a bit better.
S!
Where A-tier songs are great, S-tier songs are fantastic. Songs which aren't just great Will Wood songs, but great songs in general, in my opinion. Funny enough, there's the same amount of S-tier songs here as there were in my Telly Hall ranking. Oh yeah, let me take exactly 10 seconds to plug. If you'd enjoyed this video so far, consider subscribing. I don't upload too frequently, but when I do, it's musical analysis and ranking like this, or original covers and music videos. Obviously, they don't have to, but just think about it. Now, let's get to the S tier.
Now I want to hear it from the real peep, not some red imposter.
This flip-flopped between A and S tier several times, but eventually, it landed here. Named after the condition Capgras syndrome, where a person believes someone has been replaced by an imposter among us, the song revolves around a similar theme. The song sounds fantastic and is easily my favorite from Selfish, as it is the song that introduced me to the band. Will's vocals clearly sound like someone delusional and afraid for their life, and it works wonders. Fantastic vocals, fantastic lyrics, and goes through this entire song fantastically. The delusions continue as the chorus states that he'll never be taken alive by this person, even though it's just someone he already knows. He's so sure that this imposter has taken over that he fears for his own life, even though the person in question has no ill intentions. It's a song which represents insanity in such a perfect way, and it's such a fun listen. I also feel very lucky that the Will Wood show I went to was oversold, so he couldn't do his comedy between songs, so he played additional songs including this one. So much fun.
One pair lasts me 4 days. I go front, I go front, I go front, then I go front and front.
The topic matter of this song can be quite triggering, so skip to this timestamp if you don't want to hear anything about it. Front Street is a fun instrumental set under some extremely unsettling lyrics talking about rape. The lyrics seem to be from the perspective of someone entering a bar with a plan to trick an unassuming woman, and they slip a drug into her drink to make her more inclined to do what he wants. The chorus talks about how fucked up it all is, but people always say that it's a good time. The final lines of the song emphasize this by saying "last call for morals" over and over again, before once again talking about the good times. It's a last chance for people to rethink their intentions and do the right thing, but the good times always blind their judgment. It's a shockingly well-written song about the subject, and it does a great job at conveying its subject matter without being too on the nose.
100 drunk white children yelling "fuck, duh, police."
The first song in Will Wood's discography, except if you count Stereosexuals and the other one, I'm not counting those. We've got 6 Up 5-0 Cop Out Pro Con. Chronicling the story of a guy evading arrest, we get a glimpse of the mania we'll be seeing throughout this album. The guy runs past drunk guys chugging vodka as the police lights flash all around. An interesting part of the song is right before the chorus where he says this. He's looking at a felon after his arrests and noticed the resemblance, but doesn't see himself as a rule breaker. Lyricism like this is top tier and really holds up in comparison to the rest of Will's discography, and it works wonders as an intro. Will's unabashedly fantastic and fanatic vocal performance on top of the saxophone played by Matt Berger, which blares throughout. The whole song is amazing tonally. It's the perfect introduction to the Will Wood and the Tapeworm sound, and it has a great placement as the opening track on the album.
I can't tell you what it is, you can never ask me about it later, and we're gonna hurt some people.
Whose car are we gonna take?
In a similar fashion to Selfish, this song references something in the title, but instead of a mental illness, it's a thought experiment. Laplace's demon, coined by one Pierre-Simon de Laplace, is an idea that if some entity were to be aware of every atom's location, they could determine every event which has ever happened or will ever happen in the universe. The New Normal version of this song has a name which emphasizes this once more, being The Moral Implications of a Deterministic Universe, featuring the Onceler. The Onceler part isn't as important, but it's still interesting. Following the name, Laplace's angel sees Will questioning a world where you can make good or bad decisions, and if it means anything. He tries to justify things in an interesting light, like in the second verse where he says you don't have to be a killer to murder someone, as long as you have a good enough reason. And the kicker comes with the chorus where he says if anyone else were in his shoes, good or evil, they'd all walk on the same planet and the same length as everyone else. It's a really interesting concept, and the best part in my opinion is that amazing bridge. I won't spell out the meaning of every line in this song, mainly because I'm scared I'll get it wrong and get comments about it. But it is a fantastic song lyrically, and it's a banger from start to finish.
You want him to do you so much you could do anything?
I'd wager that this is the single most underrated song on In Case I Make It, because I hear no one talking about it. Our perspective in the song comes from someone who is chronically overwhelmed and fears a whole lot of things. Getting kidnapped, getting cancer, probably quicksand, all those things. However, he's always prided himself in his ability to never be afraid of love.
But I never been afraid of no one breaking my heart. It's not like I'm about to fall and cut my throat on the shards.
This all changes when he meets the person he's singing about, and that brings us to the chorus. He's so in love with this person, truly in love, that he's scared that he'll do something wrong to push her away. He becomes excruciatingly aware of anything he could do awry. Like, what if she changes her mind about seeing him once she sees his flaws? What if him being so open about his emotions is a bad thing? Should he make his lyrics more contrived and complicated so she doesn't know what he thinks about her? It's a shockingly story-based song the more and more you listen to it, and it works wonders. Will's high notes throughout sound immaculate and probably has some of his best vocal performances from his entire discography. The ending is interesting, as he wants to sing something for her but doesn't want to drive her away, so he lands on singing anything but "I'm in love with you," and then immediately says that in the chorus following. It's a fun song, and a really sweet song too once you listen to it enough.
If I take one more step.
The first step to recovery is to accept that you have a problem. That's where the name of this song comes from, and it's all about alcoholism. He recounts all the times where he drank during his college years and everything which led him to accepting that there was an issue. He wanted to get better, but alcohol has seemingly helped him both with his struggles with sobriety and general anxiety, mainly because it numbs him from having to worry about either of those things. The moment of acceptance, thus the title, comes in the form of the chorus.
I try to see the glasses half full, but I'd probably just drink that too.
When he starts attempting to get better, the urge to drink will always follow. The song is all about that struggle and how he got to this point, and since the release of this album, he's clearly improved. It's a really cool song narratively, and it's a whole lot of fun to listen to as well. Now, I want to prepare you all for my next choice. Before you say anything, just try and let me justify this placement, alright? You ready? Don't
Number 15. You like this? Okay, computer.
Did you freak out? Alright, let's get into this one. Will is not shy when it comes to his critiques towards social media, and this song is easily the most powerful message he's ever given on the subject. The OK Computer in the title is a reference to the Radiohead album, OK Computer, which has a similar sounding song, Fitter Happier, which talks about late-stage capitalism. Neither of the two tracks are actually songs per se, as they're both spoken word segments which objectively are quite unnerving. Said words are spoken by Bev Standing. Never heard the name before? Well, you've certainly heard her voice.
Welcome to your platform. Please enjoy responsibly.
As she begins to speak, we are introduced to the wonders of social media, where anyone's voice can be heard and the people in charge will help them along the way. But as you try to start your online journey, pop-ups begin appearing promoting various articles.
How does the following feel in your hand? 3 warning signs that you might be right about everything your worst instincts tell you.
As you soon escape the buzzwords and content farms, the one in charge begin not only farming you for engagement, but making your personal connections into engagement.
Your friends are all here in easily digestible parts. Funny how you all have so much in common. You even both like Subway Eat Fresh.
They try to convince you that you're doing the right thing by hosting your opinions on their sites and show you that everyone there agrees with you. Though if you've been anywhere online, especially in recent history, there are clearly echo chambers for all sides of any debate. You can convince yourself that your thoughts and your beliefs are in the majority and that they are correct and just by inadvertently locking yourself in a mirror ball of your truths. The issue this song prevents, though, is that once you get too deep and enough into social media to realize this underlying evil, it's too late. You've already become engrossed in creators, chat rooms, and other online spaces, and you rely too much on it to leave. This song opens by somewhat sounding welcoming, but lyrically it progresses into an inescapable nightmare. The higher-ups speaking to you continue to show their true colors, and the lyrics devolve into superstition and fear. The age of Aquarius is here, the end is nigh, showing that all of these beliefs, regardless of proof, can be escalated by just someone saying it's true. Everyone is in a statistic in a tech billionaire's bank statements, and all they have to do is tell everyone in the world that they're correct. The desensitized, the monopolized, the corrupted, whatever label you want to slap onto their users, it won't make a difference. The reality Will presents us with is the one where people are more concerned about the government banning an app they believe to promote free speech, when the very same people who created said app are using their users' information and opinions to make more money.
You liked this.
It's a fantastic critique, but I can't reasonably put it any higher than this because, well, it's not really a song, is it? Regardless of what some may say, it's not exactly the song of the summer, but it is fantastically written and a masterful piece of art by Will, placed perfectly before the main character, because once you're online enough, you begin to think you are.
The power of two!
If I wanted to be funny, I would have put this at 22nd, but this list is deadly serious. As serious as a Will Wood ranking can be, that is. The Normal album is all about how we view normality in society, and Tueg Tuir, I'm pronouncing it that way, and I don't care what anyone says, suggests that it might be easier just to be crazy. He's tried not caring what other people think, and by golly, he likes it. He talks about how he likes what he sees from his third eye, be it illusions, hallucinations, or lucid dreams, and that he's okay staying the way he is instead of conforming with the norm. The chorus especially shows him accepting himself, saying that he's just a psycho, and that he didn't lose his mind, he simply chose not to be normal. It's a fantastic song and is an absolute banger the whole time. The wild piano playing throughout, and especially at the instrumental bridge, works wonders and really goes to show how talented Will is. I once had to stop driving because I was jiving to this track too hard. It's just great.
Might work, no reaction.
Okay, it's got a little kick.
Well, I guess you could say this is the song with two names. Hey, stop that. If you've been keeping track, this is the final song from Will Wood's years as Will Wood and the Tapeworms to appear on this list. This is mainly because I prefer his more chill songs, and even when they're a little crazy, I feel like his newer work controls it a little more. Now, a thing about the Tapeworms era songs, and this is a fun game you can play at home, is that you can pick any of them and make a good argument that it's about drugs. This one, though, is just straight up about drugs with no obscurity. The names of the song talking about his body reacting to said drugs and a bone subsequently shattering respectively. This I just pulled an ATM machine. Okay, I don't even know why I wrote that. Will flies by the lyrics alongside a manic instrumental, making a lot of associations with the drugs to a desert. Talking about cottonmouth making him feel like he was in a desert, talking about rattlesnakes biting him just as the drugs are killing him, and etc. The chorus suggests that he is a chemical reaction because whenever he's taken was a little bit too much and is actively killing him. He keeps shouting the lyrics and chorus at breakneck pace until the outro where the music begins to slow down. The melody here actually resembles Skeleton Appreciation Day a lot. Whatever character Will portrays in the song is taking his final breaths here, where he finally realizes that this is happening because of his wrongdoings. This is where we leave the song, and it transitions wonderfully into Everything Is a Lot, the song. It's everything you want from a Tapeworms era song, fast-paced music with some fantastic lyricism and very long and strange song titles. Though I'm much more fond of the next 12 songs from the post-2020 Will era. Marsha is a super fun song with some of the most wildly serious lyrics Will's ever put in a song. He discusses the idea of taking a mental illness diagnosis and making it a large part of your identity, and more importantly, if this is a good idea. He talks about how hard it can be to discern aspects of one's personalities and symptoms of an illness, and those who make their diagnosis a large part of their being can make that a harder line to find. The whole song is a critique on how society views mental illness, and it's genuinely fantastic. The bridge shows the perspective of someone who's become so certain that they have a certain condition or illness that they're going to the doctor to validate that aspect of their identity. Lines like "disease is in the eye of the beholder" and him asking for another test after seemingly not meeting the criteria of the original diagnosis. He judges the test as something you can pass with study and review, not like a medical diagnostic. It's a really interesting way of looking at mental illness in the modern world, where it's been somewhat romanticized, and it works wonderfully.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
That's too damn bad!
Will has said that this is one of his favorite songs he's ever written, and I'd have to agree. It comes from the perspective of a worried parent trying to connect with their daughter. A lot of the lyrics are memories they've had of their daughter as she grows up, such as the pink lemonade that she used to drink and a fairly bad haircut where she buzzed her hair and dyed it yellow. Bad look. They're trying to connect with her, but is finding it hard to do so, but they're clearly well-intentioned and is trying. The chorus especially shows this as we see them ask their daughter to let him know what he can do better as a parent.
Baby, could you play along with me? Baby, wouldn't that be alright with you? And when we find out what's wrong with me, could you tell me how I'm right for you?
Part of me wonders if this is a single parent, because there's no mention of another person in the relationship whatsoever throughout the song. If so, it might make sense why the two are so distant. They've both gone through a tragedy and are trying to cope in different ways. They keep trying to connect with her, giving her hand-me-down clothes, trying to enjoy a family Christmas, and talking about the future together. Sometimes they'll remember when she was younger and everything was okay, like when she fell off her bike but continued the walk home anyway through the tears. They've both cried before, but it's different now after their loss. By the end of the song, the parent knows her thoughts aren't going to be shared with them, and that's none of their business, but they still want to have a connection with their daughter. The final line isn't them asking what they can do or what they're doing wrong, but just if she could tell them how to be there for her and what she needs. It's been a shaky time, but through it all, they've still got each other. They've went through hard times and they won't ever be the same, but it's better than the alternative.
I want to see what's going on.
No, Mother, don't look out the window!
Top 10 time, and starting us off is Venetian Blind Man. This song, unlike the others from Camp Here and There, doesn't seem to have a general meaning, instead being entirely about a character from the podcast, Rowan. Like I said, I have not listened to it, so I can't say I understand every lyric, but I'm putting this song here as my one allocated fun bias pick that I have for every ranking. A song that I just like because I like how it sounds, it's fun. The sound is fantastic, perfect for the summer camp setting, and the gradual rise in intensity works wonders. The name refers to how this person in question is paranoid, so he squints out of his blinds to see if anything's outside. It's super fun and is a whole lot of fun to play, so yeah, I'm just gonna put this here at the bottom of the top 10.
Alexa, play White Noise.
As with most songs in this category, I had a really hard time putting this right before the start of the next tier, but I think I'm alright with it being at the top of the S tier. White Noise is a song about meaning, both in the lack of it and the finding of it. He begins by talking about the feeling of meaninglessness, such as sitting in a room with boring, unassuming colors, white fluorescent lights, songs which just aren't right playing in the background. It's a place that exists, but it has no meaning. It simply is. But then, if you listen closely, you hear it. The white noise. In this song, it represents meaning. It might not make sense and it might not be much, but in the world we live in, that's all you need to feel worthwhile. The noise can be everything and nothing at once. It can have microtones hidden throughout with little bits of meaning. You could call it post-avant-garde music and call it a day. Hell, it could even cure cancer if you look hard enough. The idea is that this mischievous of nothing could result in everything is kind of like life. You're given life and then you'll die, and as a very wise puppet once said, it's up to you to decide what lines between the hyphen of those two words. Your life may not have any potential at the moment, or you could just be unsure of what you want to do, but you can do anything that you put your mind to. That's what the white noise represents, meaning and opportunity. It may not seem like anything now, but it can be anything that you want it to be.
S!
Say that again?
S!
Welcome to the final 8 songs. These, I believe, are the 8 best works by Will, and are easily my favorites from him. Not only are they catchy, but the stories told through them are equally fantastic. So, without further ado, let's see what's in spot number 8. I know someone who isn't allowed to listen to this song because it's too sad. This song is all about a time where Will had to put up one of his pet rats to sleep, and it comes from the perspective of Will trying to convince himself that it will be okay. He watches as the nurse puts the gas mask on the rat and it begins to die, and as the rat begins to pass on, he starts thinking about where it could be going and how he could see it again. He wants to believe that there is something after death to help him get through the grief, but deep down he knows how unlikely that is.
And I know that I'm wrong. That when you're gone, and I can't bring you home.
He accepts in the bridge that the only reason we say that there's something afterwards is because we don't want to think about the implications of there not being an afterlife. Existentially, it's a terrifying thought, and he wants to avoid that to the best of his ability. But ultimately, he realizes that it's useless, and that his rat is gone forever. But they'll still be able to see each other in his memory and in his dreams, and that they'll never truly be apart. It's a beautiful thing, and is probably the quietest song in Will's discography, which is in no way a bad thing. Now for something completely different. This is a super upbeat song where we see someone being tested in partnership with MK Ultra. If you've seen Stranger Things, you'll know what it's about, kinda. They took drugs and tested people by injecting them with said drugs. This was supposed to have a psychological effect, making them more willing to give away secret information, but it seemed that most of the drugs only had an adverse effect on the test subjects. And by adverse, I mean really bad. The entire song is basically Will listing obscure conditions and drugs and stuff, but it starts with someone collapsing on the floor in the ER, so that's about the vibe. The whole time the band is playing with some of the wildest arrangement heard since the Tapeworms era, and damn, it's catchy. When I went to the Will Wood show, they had ASL interpreters there, and at the end of the show, Will apologized for not playing this song because he didn't want to torture the interpreters. The kicker comes at the chorus, where Will does a crazy spoken word segment, which is simply wild. I have no idea how he can write such crazy stuff. I mean, listen to this.
Growing up, how was your relationship with the fundamentals of conscious existence? Did you have xenon orchid sinews spilling down the outer center of your blooming Escher Mandelbrot head? And how about claustrophilic tendrils clapping caskets closed on seven-knuckle thumbs? Did you get along well with the Gideon bugler pineal glands, your projector eyes casting sci-fis, and your ST-yard strands?
I mean, wow. This entire ending sequence is just phenomenal, and the whole song is fantastic from start to finish. Definitely one of the highlights from the Normal album.
My dream girl, those eyes, that nose.
This was my number one pick for a long time, until I re-listened to his discography, but this still is one of my all-time favorites. The song has several interpretations, but one of the more popular ones, and the one that I always imagined that it is that it's a song about growing up and finding someone to share your life with. For the first part, he talks about things such as childhood pets and peer pressure to become a man, the latter of which is referred to in every chorus, with people telling Will to grow up or he'll be seen as a child forever, and in the modern world that's a pretty bad thing. It's scary to grow up and start doing adult things, but this song masterfully covers the topic. Now for the other aspect of the song, the repeated mentions of a dream girl. He wants to find someone that he can settle down with and truly love, but it's become increasingly difficult to do so in this day and age. He imagines the perfect person for him, someone who's accepting of his childish side, but still is able to keep him grounded. The fantasy in his head is unrealistic though, so he accepts that the search may take some time.
Dream girl, come, but keep your hands off me. Go on back to bed, my love. That's where dreams are supposed to be.
The ending of the song is a climactic chorus which stands out against the fairly laid-back front half of the track, and it has fantastic backing vocals to go along with it. Will begs to find someone perfect for him, almost to the point of delusion, and so he talks himself down as though he's speaking to someone who drank a little too much, saying, "That's enough, let's get you home." It's a great song which truly solidifies the start of In Case I Make It as one of my favorite album runs ever. Suburbia Overture. The 6-minute opener to the Normal album is beloved by fans everywhere, and there's no doubt in my mind that it deserves a spot in the top 5 in this list. The song is separated into 3 parts: Greeting from Marybelle Township, Vampire Culture, and Love Me Normally, so I'll be talking about each one individually. Starting off with the suburban part of the overture, we're welcomed into the sweet little neighborhood of Marybelle Township. With doo-wop and an older sound in general being the emphasis on this part of the track, it really feels like we're walking past the copy-paste house of a suburban town in the 80s. Immediately, we see what Will thinks of suburbia, comparing white picket fences to barbed wire, both used to keep others out but in very different manners. This whole part of the song criticizes the perfect and idyllic nature of neighborhoods like this, even though living in one can be extremely strenuous socially. By living in a suburban town, you might be expected to act a certain way and do things a certain way, and even if you don't, you'll still be labeled a disruption to the community. Everyone's expected to hand out candy during Halloween, wish their neighbors a good day and a Merry Christmas, and go to church in the case of Marybelle Township. Will talks about the suburban dream of a wife and a beautiful blonde-eyed child to raise, and how elusive the ideal nuclear family can really be. Those who may have one look happy in their dollhouse neighborhoods, but as the chorus suggests, they might not be as joyful and social as expected in suburbia. The lights are on, but no one's home. By living there, there's immediate social standards set upon you, and even if you follow them, it might feel hollow. It's not the joy of community which makes these people act the way they do, it's just how they're supposed to act. As Will says, "You're living the American dream, but you're not truly living." On top of the meaning, throughout the segment, mentions of OK Ultra, terms which will appear in I Me Myself, and the chorus lines from Well Better Than the Alternative appear. It's a really nice touch which adds to the whole overture idea. Way better than the HAR ones, I'm so sorry. After the sun falls on the neighborhood, the song quiets down for a moment, until a seemingly kind neighbor from a nuclear family pulls out a metaphorical or real AR-15 and the song shifts into vampire culture. This sounds a whole lot more like something from the Tapeworms era, and putting it at the start makes the song a great bridge between the two eras of Will's music. The words aren't as deep, simply referring to other happenings in the neighborhood with mentions of scandalous behavior littered throughout, but the way Will sings it is the kicker. His welcoming tone from the start is all but gone, fully replaced by a demonic scream. The name from this segment comes from the chorus, which talks about how the culture of suburbia can destroy you and drain you for all the reasons previously mentioned. The suburban culture isn't your friend, and as idyllic as it may seem, it could result in awful effects on your mental health. The chorus here suggests that it isn't your fault for not conforming to their ideas, though, and that the vampiric nature of suburbia can drain you of yourself until there's nothing left and you're just another one of them. So you shouldn't beat yourself up over what happened, as it's the community which did this. It's a really interesting concept with some truly wild vocals and bombastic instrumental. This cuts away suddenly into a more serene nighttime, crickets chirping and the wind calmly blowing between the houses. Will sings about a typical life, living each day and doing your job till you die, and how so many people simply long for that. He wonders why he couldn't have just been normal. Normalcy is a recurring theme in the album, and this part opens up that concept. Is the vampiric nature of suburbia truly that toxic, or are you just a social outlier? Vampire culture tried to shut down this idea, but this is the note you're left on as the album continues. It's a fantastic song which sets up every facet of the record, which manages to have a little bit of everything for Will Wood fans to enjoy. It's a phenomenal start to a brilliant album, and I'm not putting this here because I believe it overshadows the rest of the album, but simply because it sets up the entire record so well, along with it sounding fantastic. Every track manages to stand out in its own way, and the album as a whole is simply great. If you've been keeping score though, yes, this is the highest placement for any album aside from In Case I Make It. Yes, I am an In Case I Make It appreciator, and I do think it's Will's finest work. So let's see which 4 songs from it I believe are his best.
Wonder how I didn't die.
Next up from In Case I Make It, we've got Half Decade Hangover. This is an absolutely masterful song about Will's experiences in the 2010s, especially in the early Tapeworms era and the 2012 he no longer remembers. Will was an active drug user, and he made a lot of decisions back then which he deeply regrets now, and has been trying to actively both personally and in his music move past. Half Decade Hangover is the culmination of 5 years of this active change, and it's kind of a way of Will showing us how he's changed since the release of Selfish. Starting off as on the nose as you can get, Will wonders how he didn't die because of all the dumb things he did in his late teen years and early 20s. He remembers how he thought he was doing everything right, claiming he was reality itself as he drank his problems away. But there came a moment when he realized how unreliable and dangerous this way of life truly was. Lyrically mentioning this, saying that he woke up from his blackout in the middle of a busy freeway. Now he must live with all the shitty decisions he's made which led him down this path, with the chorus explaining it perfectly.
I was drunk when I made my bed. Now with a half-decade hangover, I lay down in it.
He knows his audience semi-expects the screaming wild individual who he once was, but he can't give him to them anymore. He hopes that those who listen will believe he's truly changed, and that he's not putting on another persona. He wants to be as authentically himself as he can be, and if that means dropping any of the theatrics of his past, so be it. The song closes with the line he's been repeating. It's a half-decade hangover, Jesus Christ, my aching head. But in the final chorus, he asks for some ibuprofen, showing that he's finally ready to move on from his past and continue to become a better, more realized person. It's an emotional masterpiece, which I love to bits, and it's easily one of the most underrated songs by Will, but not quite good enough to make it into the top 3.
I have mapped the cupboards and drawers.
If I had a nickel for every song Will Wood has written about rats dying which make people cry, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, and on the same album. This song goes over the tragic story of a rat which once lived in Will's house, and we are told the story from the rat's innocent perspective. It doesn't really know anything about how annoying its presence in the house may be. Its only focus is surviving and raising a family someday. Starting off with Will's baritone ukulele, you're immediately hit that this album is going to be a lot quieter than his previous work. The rat talks about how he's learned the ins and outs of the house, and how he searches for food everywhere. He's safe and warm in the house, stealing the occasional snack left out on the table, and he has already found a nice little space where he could have a family. The only issue is that he's all alone, and he doesn't have anything to share his life with, nor anyone. The life in question isn't exactly wonderful, as he can only have scraps of food left behind by the people living there. He wonders if he'll die one day, and if he does, he'll be able to eat all the cheese he wants, hoping that someday he won't simply have to survive but live. He thinks about if this manner of life is truly a part of nature, or if he's trapped in some kind of place where he shouldn't be. We know the latter is true, but the rat has nothing to base what his life should be on. Eventually, the people living there try to catch the rat, but he evades them. He wasn't able to get any food that day, but he thinks that just one day without it will be alright. However, as the winter months settle in, the place he sleeps get colder and colder, and it's harder to find food. The only thing that keeps him going is the idea that after winter passes, he'll be able to eat, and he once again fantasizes about the unlimited cheese he'll have in the afterlife. After a long and lonely winter, the spring finally comes, and the rat is awestruck when he sees the thing he's been dreaming about for so long, a large chunk of cheese sitting in the open waiting for him. He steps onto the little platform which holds the cheese, and as he takes a bite, he stumbles back to his little home as his pain begins to grow and grow. He knows that he's going to die, so he begins to feel hopeful that he'll be able to have all the cheese he wants, and that this wasn't that bad. But as the world around him begins to fade, he realizes that there's no such thing as the great beyond. There's no cheese waiting for him. Everything begins to fade to black, and the rat realizes that he wasn't living life wrong, or that he was missing out. It's simply that difficult, and that's what nature has become. He wishes goodbye to all the other creatures living in homes just like he is, and bids them good luck, and finally succumbs to nature, playing out. It's a beautiful song which perfectly sets the tone for the album, and I will always think of it fondly. And maybe I cried once to it, I don't know, listen to it, it's sad as hell. Will has talked about how awful his life was in his college years, not remembering 2012, doing drugs, and making extremely bad decisions. However, his life was also extremely difficult when he wrote and performed the songs which he talked about those subject matters in during the Tapeworms era. It's easy to see how stark the difference is between Will's work from the 2010s to now. If you gave someone Selfish and In Case I Make It and told them the same artist made them both, I wouldn't judge them for having to double check. Will was clearly still going through something when he wrote those songs, because they're kind of insane if you didn't notice, and Sex, Drugs, Rock and Roll talks about how that has affected him. There's a lot of references to his earlier work throughout the album, like him asking for someone to hand him his shovel in Half-Decade Hangover, and this song is just the same. He calls himself selfish for feeling the way he does about his earlier work, and how he's still grateful that his creative work is being seen, but he hates having to be the one that's seen. He laments that his creative work and fame originated from the same time in his life where he was unstable, and that their origins are one and the same. He looks back at who he was when he started and thought that if he knew he'd end up like this, he wouldn't have started doing this music. All of these thoughts come together in the thesis statement of the song, where he finally admits that he doesn't want to be that person anymore. He doesn't want to be the crazy person who screams and hits his keyboard with his foot. He just wants to be the most honest version of himself he can be. This was the first song released for In Case I Make It, so getting this message out early must have been difficult, but it did prepare people for what his new work would sound like. After the chorus, he admits that the new approach might drive fans away, calling it career suicide, but he hates what he's created in the past and how it reflects on him, and he also hates typical music, so he wants to find a middle ground between the two. The issue is that he knows what people want from him. They want the maniacal character which wears lipstick, embraces guitars, and acts unabashedly insane. But he stands firm, saying that that person is gone, and this is who he is now. And after all the craziness he's presented, all he wants to do is make his fans think that he's not insane, that he's not an addict, that he's not Will Wood. All he wants to be viewed as is human. And after everything he's built up over the years, it's become incredibly difficult for that to be the case. But he's going to try. And he's going to release whatever it takes for him to be himself. This song is typically overshadowed by the others around it. Tomcat Disposables, Cicada Days, and Euthanasia are all singles as well as being very good, but I truly believe that the 7-minute ballad is the best song in all of Will Wood's discography. It's a song with a very slow burn to get to the climax, but it works wonders every step of the way. The song talks about Will's hopes and fears for his future, mainly romantically but also for life in general. After a young adult life filled with trial and error, going into his late 20s and 30s, he wonders what his life will be like. Because of this, he opens the song saying that no one should take the words from the song as advice or as gospel. He mentions how troublesome his life has been, saying that he's lost most battles he's fought, and that he's only made it this far by following what he already knows. He talks about the idea of being married, and how unlikely it may seem. Imagining a wedding, he pictures himself standing in front of his wife, having difficulty believing that he's lived so long to get to this point. One of the most beautiful lyrics from this first section to me is this one.
Weeding out the garden where the milestones gather moss.
Married life will treat him and his partner so well that his time will be able to pass him by without injury. Milestones like anniversaries, college acceptance, birthdays, grandkids, they'll all grow old, covered in moss as the years go by. They're so content with each other that they don't notice the years going. That's the kind of relationship Will dreams about. As difficult as that may be to attain. But he knows some people who were able to achieve this, and that's where the chorus comes in.
But I wanna be just like my parents before I was born.
His parents lived the perfect suburban life, the life he dreams of so much, but because of the way his life has gone up to this point, he questions if that's even possible anymore. He wants kids, perhaps a daughter, as he's pretended to have so many times, but he's grown tired of everything that he's unsure if he could really raise one. His father helped mess him up, and he doesn't want to put any of that on his future kids, but he thinks that just might be part of parenthood. The issue is finding someone who he could love so much that they become parents. But in his time, he's been with many women, many of which were temporary, so he's not sure if he'll ever find true love. The concept of marriage as a whole is something he's unsure about, since he's been with so many different people so many times. The chorus repeats slightly differently.
So can we be just like my parents when I was young?
He no longer wants himself to be like his parents, but he wants to live the life they led, happily married with someone else, thus the we. Going into the bridge, he lets all of it go as he talks about his future freely, talking about how tired he is with the facade he's put up for so many years. He's willing to make sacrifices to reach happiness, similarly to how his parents lived, giving his child a hyphen in their last name and even making the vow to be wed forever, even though the concept of forever scares him. He wants so desperately to live the life his parents did, but throughout the song he doubts the possibility of this ever happening. And he finally makes the realization before the final chorus.
Imagine me just like my parents. Yeah, right.
He couldn't ever live the life his parents led because he's so different from them, and that's okay. He's made mistakes which have led him down a different path, but that doesn't mean he can't be happy. It will be different, and it may not be as perfect as 80s suburbia was, but change is inevitable. It's going to be okay. As the revelation slows down, Will pictures his far future, specifically him after he dies. He imagines his future wife sitting by his gravestone, although he imagines he'll die first because of the life he's led, and the thought of someone loving him so truly and so deeply is enough to keep him going. They weren't married forever, but it was close enough. And if he can get there, if he can find someone who would ever love him that way, that belief that he always held will have been enough. It's a heartbreaking song which never feels like it's pushing the runtime, and those 7 minutes and the 9 minutes in the live version are lovely start to finish. I believe the sound of the song is the encapsulation of In Case I Make It, which stands to date as my favorite album of all time. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this video. It was a super fun one to make, as I can yap about Will Wood forever, but I didn't want to make this video too long, so I hope this was a reasonable length. I have no idea how long this video will end up being since I'm writing this right now, but I'd guess about an hour and 20 minutes. If that sounds about right, then leave a comment, or don't, I don't know. If you love Will Wood, I've made several music videos covering some of his songs, which I think are pretty cool, so maybe go check those out if you want. Also, if you want to talk to more people who love Will Wood, join my Discord server. It's super fun with a lot of very nice and silly people, and you can be informed about all my latest projects beforehand. And another one may be coming sooner than you think. Again, thank you so much for sticking around, and I hope you all have a lovely evening.